Now, I request Satyamurthy to set the context and give opening remark. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Team MMA, for organizing this timely event. Timely in the sense, anytime is good time in our country and context to have a session like this on demography. See, just 30 years back, that is about a generation back, we were told that in India, population was a problem, or growth of population, rate of growth of population was a huge economic problem, social problem, etc. We accepted. Suddenly, immediately after the economic reforms commenced, or a little earlier, we were told India's population is going to be a boon, a dividend. That was because we were getting more and more Indians in the working age group, earning age group, and with the purchasing capacity. That's a wonderful experience that we are having, the present generation especially. And we belonging to the older generation or an earlier generation are watching India grow, the Indians grow. Our midriff is getting stronger and bulkier because of economic progress, both of the nation and of the individual. Where is it leading us to as a nation and a people? And two, where are we looking at it another generation from now? So only we have to accept whatever we may say of the Indian economy in the years and decades immediately after independence. The nation laid a very strong, rather relatively strong ground for better health care compared to the pre-independence era. Today, that is also meant that we have an average healthier Indian compared to 100 years back. It also means the mortality age is going up, has already gone up and it's still going up. Is it going to be a boon or a bane? That question also the policy makers have to address, which is not being done. We all know the people in the 60 plus generation, they are healthier than earlier. The average Indian middle class I am talking about lives up to 80, 85 years healthier. But what is its productivity, its economic contribution to the society? As long as he doesn't create problems for others, particularly in terms of health and other issues, or has got the wherewithal to face it, that by itself is a economic boon to the nation. But beyond that, there is a large population that also lives up to that age, but not with that kind of healthcare facilities. It comes with its own burdens, it comes with its own problems, not just for the individual but for the economy. I am not looking only at that, but even as we look at the benefits of the demographic dividend, as we know, we have to look at the other also. Well, the government is doing enough in terms of policy initiatives to strengthen and benefit from the positives of demographic dividend. What are we planning? What are we going to do in the years and decades to come? I don't think anyone in the government is giving any serious thought to it, because it is framing a policy for that is easier than finding the resources and making the commitment to make it work. This is the very idea behind this evening's title, and we have three able speakers who know their subject, and we are waiting for them to deliver the address. And no, I am not going to have any comments beyond this. Sir, I invite you, Mr. Ramdram, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Not immediately. I think it's Mr. Suresh Babu's presentation is here. Would you like to go?
No, please.
Anyway, while they are doing it, good evening. Thanks for those of you who have come. It reminds me of my college days because there's a concentration of people in the last row near the door. So, and my senior colleague, Mr. Sivasailam, is also here. Thank you very much for coming, sir.
Post-COVID scenario, many senior citizens are sitting at home and watching you online.
Anyway, before I dive into I have only 3 slides. One of our seniors, we are all members of the Tamil Nadu Retired IAS Association, which is a very active body. We meet once in 3 months. We have people, we are all relatively younger there. I am 70, but I am among the younger people in that association. One of our seniors used to say, we always write IAS retired as RETD. He says, don't write RETD because RETD is also the abbreviation for retarded. So, most people think anyway we are retarded, we don't have to confess it ourselves. So write RETA, RED. So I just saw that and then whether it was a pun. This is a subject in which everybody has an opinion. But the facts may or may not be what we think. Let me just give you a couple of numbers and then I'll ask the audience, what do you think of that? At the time of independence, our population was 35 crore. Now we are exactly 4 times, 140 crore. Do you think it's because Indians are producing more and more children over the last 70 plus years? Anybody who thinks we are producing more children, please put up your hand. Okay. So the fact is actually, it is not because we are producing more and more children. Actually, the average number of children per family has come less than half. In the Hindi-speaking states, it used to be about 6. Now it has come down to 3. In the southern states, it used to be 4. It has come down to 2. But then why the growth? So that is why the demographic transition. In a pre-modern society, both the birth rate and death rate are very high. That is the first part. And then as health facilities and nutrition improve, death rates keep falling very quickly. Whereas birth rates take a little time because it's a more social phenomenon rather than just a health phenomenon. It takes a little time to decrease. And that is a period during which population grows. No country is an exception to this. Even the Western countries have gone through that. They did that about 100 years ago and we are now going through it. Within India itself, states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu have more or less reached the final stage. Very little growth. States like UP and Bihar are still going through the transition. That's why the growth is there. But the good news is that everywhere birth rates are falling. Now, this is a disturbing slide. I am showing the disparity between states in terms of income. Now, government's own data, some of the I think bottom lines are not showing here. In terms of per capita income, the southern 5 states, their per capita income is about 4 times that of the population in UP, Bihar and Jharkhand. So that is the disturbing feature of population, not just the numbers, but the lower level of development. There can be different, many arguments why it is so. I would say better governance in the south, more literacy. My wife is from UP, so she says, you people have had a peaceful history. We were invaded by this one, that one. We always were fighting, so there was no time for, like Tamil Nadu, you had time for Bharatanatyam and Carnatic music, where we spent all the time fighting the enemies. Maybe partly true, but the fact is that since independence, you can't blame any outsider for lack of development. It's our own administration, elected governments. So maybe standards in governance vary. So how the government is going to address that, we have no answers to that. I'm just placing some of the facts, and then we'll have a Q&A, so we'll see what. On the last slide is something which the average person thinks, Muslims are multiplying much more, and then at some point they will overtake Hindus, which is not a fact. So even the Muslim fertility rate is falling. I mean, it is slightly higher than Hindus, but there are other communities, other religions which have got a lower fertility than Hindus. As you can see, Sikhs, Jains, of course, small numbers, but they have a much lower fertility. In terms of total population, yes, Hindus percentage has declined by about 5%. Muslims have gone up by about 7%. But the fact is, the average Hindu family in UP, Bihar or Jharkhand has more children than the average Muslim family in the south. So that's a fact which can be verified. There it's about 3, here it's about 2, irrespective of religion. So rather than religion, it is a region where you live seems to determine the family size, your life expectancy, and also the professional outlook. The final point is, Bihar is about 80% rural, whereas in the south, we are almost 55% urban, only 45% is rural. Now, what happens when your population is 80% rural? Everybody is in agriculture work, or the men migrate to other states for construction work. I remember when I was in charge of the assembly building, 100% of the labor came from Hindi-speaking states. So I persuaded the then CM, Mr. Karunanidhi, that your dream building has been constructed not by Tamils but by Hindi-speaking people. So you must have a Bada Khana on the same pandal the next day. So he spoke to somebody in Buhari, they sent mutton biryani. And so that is the first time in the same dais, he spoke in Tamil, for which there were no claps. Then when IAS also translated that into Hindi, whenever that was speaking, so there was a lot of claps. So he said, this is the irony. I said, that is an irony, yes. Your building was done by Hindi-speaking people. So what is the solution? The solution is, it's obvious, but those states have to come forward for education and employment opportunities, which ultimately depends on, good governance. Tamil Nadu, we have had very opposing kind of governments, but the overall development direction has not deviated. So that is something which is to the credit of the political parties here. So I will stop at this point. And if there are any questions, we take questions now or at the end? At the end. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Good evening and thank you very much for this opportunity to be here to speak on a very important issue, the context of which has already been set by my previous two speakers. Let me start by adding 2 or 3 more points to what Mr. Ram Subramanian told. He talked about demographic transition, that is broadly the 3 phases. Phase 1, where there is very high death rate and very high birth rate. Phase 2, when there is death rate that is falling, but birth rate sticky, not falling. Phase 3, when we have birth rate as well as death rates falling. And phase 4 and 5 depends on the steepness of the fall. Birth rate, which is falling more steeper than the other, but broadly 3. 1. Second, there is also a phenomenon what we call as structural transformation in an economy. That is, economies generally have an agrarian structure to start with, then move on to industrialization, and in the third phase of their economic development process will have a larger share for services in the economy. This process of moving from an agrarian economic structure to a service-oriented economic structure is the process of structural transformation, where the percentage share of each of these sectors in GDP varies. Initially, it will be agriculture that will be contributing more to GDP, and after a point, it will be services. Along with this percentage share in terms of value added, percentage shares in employment would also be changing. That is, initially a lot of people might be working in agriculture, then there will be a lot of people working in industry, and then a lot of people working in services. Keep that also in mind. Third, there is a phenomenon of what we call as migration transition. That is, initially it will be the unskilled labor migrating, and once when the unskilled labor is migrating, generally it is male migration, and there are only 2 extremes of it. Sometimes the entire family goes, or the male migrates and that person will start a new family in that new location, and the family back home is dumped. That is unskilled. Second phase of migration is semi-skilled migration, where it is again predominantly male migration, but family is here and there is money coming back to the home place, not the host place. So host is where the migrant works and home is from where he is going. So there will be remittances for the economy, and that is semi-skilled. Third phase of migration is when the highly skilled people migrate, and when they migrate, generally it is with family. And they would prefer not to come back. We get to hear that. Once when they migrate, their own outlook towards India might change. We see our own students, after going to US, will come back and say that hi, India is very hot, it's dusty, kind of a thing, and the entire family moves there. But the loss is that we don't get remittances in that. Keep that in mind. One more point, then I'll come to my presentation. In 2047, 100 years of independence, we have a dream. And the dream is what we call as Vikasit Bharat. The dream is to acquire the tag or status of a developed economy, which by definition is $12,500 per capita income. As of now, the definition. By 2047, that definition might change. But as of now, the definition of a developed country status, according to World Bank, is $12,500 GDP per capita. India's GDP now is 2,200. Let us grant it as $2,400. Now we are in 2024. And we have now 23 years to reach 2047. We have to move from $2,400 to $12,500 if we want to achieve that tag of a developed country status. My crude calculation in an Excel sheet shows that if you want to achieve this, you have to grow at any cost of 8 to 8.5% per year. Please remember, growth rate has a compounding effect. So you are growing this year and the next year you are growing on top of that. So there is a compounding effect. So with that compounding effect, if you want to achieve $12,500 per capita, consistently for the next 23 years, we have to grow at 8.5 or at least 8% rate of growth. India has never done that. The sweet spot in India's growth rate has been the period 2003 to 2007, just before the global financial crisis, 4 to 5 years, when we grew at 9% rate of growth. And in 1 year we clocked 9.5% rate of growth. And when we started to dream about double-digit growth rate, overtaking China and all these things, but after that we have never grown at this rate. And perhaps the only phase in global history when economies grew at this high rate for nearly quarter of a century is only the Southeast Asian economies, what we call as the Asian miracle, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore and things of that sort. So these are three things that I wanted to put into your mind before we talk about demographic dividend. Well, there is demographic transition, there is economic structural change, there is migration transition, and then we have this dream of getting to be a developed country status. Now let us try and put all these things together and I will rush through my presentation. This is what I was talking about, right? That is, we need to have contributions from all segments of the society, particularly children and youth. If we really want to achieve to that 2047 because it's our dream. Now, what should be then our focus to achieve that? So please remember, I am not telling that demographic dividend is a boon or a bane. And you know that professors are very, very careful. They won't take a position. They are always fence sitters. They can be either this side or this side. Right? So I am putting all this to you with a preamble in terms of 3 or 4 facts and then putting out some numbers and facts at you, and then it is up to you to really make up whether it is a boon or a bane. Okay. So, what is that we need? We need to have national investments in children and youth. And that only will yield long-term returns. And that is the main point that I really want to highlight. Okay. So, this point was talked about earlier that, there is a fertility decline phenomenon that is happening, right? And once when the dependency ratios actually come down and when there is a larger percentage of youth or working age population, then there is a possibility of getting what we call as a demographic dividend. Now there is also a positive thing of this, that is, once when fertility declines, when the number of children actually per family reduces, then you can invest more per child. And we see that, right? We can send them to better schools, we can teach them English, we can actually give them the best of gadgets nowadays, we can buy them the best of mobile phones and send them to colleges. All this is possible. But if you have a larger family size, then there is a problem. Investment per child is actually less, which means that what we in economics call as human capital formation will be very difficult if there is no fertility decline, and that's a problem which developing countries face. Okay. But please remember the last one, that is, with the passage of time, the share of older population rises, right? And then the demographic dividend will slowly start to vanish. So there is only a window of demographic opportunity. You can't actually reap this after some time. So if you want to reap it, you have to act now. Please don't postpone. That's the point that I want to emphasize. Yeah, because economies have gone through this. Yeah, and they have lost that window now. We are having that window now, and we should actually hit hard when the iron is hot. So the point that I want to emphasize is that what is required is forward-looking policies. Yeah? And we need to incorporate three elements in such forward-looking policies. That is population dynamics, very important. Mr. Satyamurthy talked about that, the importance of that in policy making. Education and skills, extremely important. We also need to take care of health. COVID is a big kind of a lesson for all of us in that. Gender sensitivity, very important, and I'll come to that towards the end of my presentation. And also we need to provide some kinds of rights and choices for the younger generation to express themselves, to reap the full potential of this youth. So, this is something that I wanted to try here. That is, the median age as far as India is concerned is around 26 now. Yeah. And that's not bad. It was actually 28. Now we are moving to 36. After some time, the median age actually increases. Once when the median age increases, well, productivity actually comes down. And then, as Mr. Satyamurthy was talking, we would become an aged society. And that has got its own consequences. Now let me throw some numbers on this.
Back by one slide.
Yeah.
One more minute on that.
Yeah. So this is the median age in India, and this I have put the median age of some of the other emerging and developing economies. Yeah. Sorry, I did not take that. I focused only on India. Yeah. Now, well, when we look at the median age and when we look at unemployment, we really have a very, very sorry state of affairs. That is, first of all, we don't have a comprehensive data on employment. Yeah? There are so many agencies that collect data on employment. The CMI gives. PLFS, the government, official statistics provides. There are other agencies. Now, I'm taking one agency, that is the CMI state. Yeah. And this is something which comes up again and again, that unemployment is the highest among youth. Which means that, tied up with what I started off, that there is a window of opportunity, the percentage of youth is in the population is high, but at the same time, unemployment is also high among this youth. And this is an outlier because this is the COVID period. Yeah. So let's cut it out. But still, when we look at the other age group in terms of unemployment, we find that unemployment is very high in the age group, especially between 20 to 24. And please remember, this by definition is what we call as NEET, not our NEET medical examination. Yeah. Neither in education, employment or training. That's what we are calling it. So what are they doing then? They are neither in education, they are not in employment, they are not in training. So they're just languishing, this youth. Yeah? And that's the problem which we will have to encounter. And please remember, when I talk all of this, we need to see it in the perspective of Vikasit Bharat 2047. Okay. This is a state-wise breakup in terms of, unemployment and Mr. Ramchandran talked about this, which are the states which are labor exporting states and which are the states which are labor receiving states is well known in India, and I don't need to spend time on that. There is one point that I want to draw your attention to for this slide. That is, we find that regular wage workers now, regular wage worker means like me. When I say like me, I am privileged. I am privileged means I have all social security benefits. I have my LTC, I have pensions, I can take leave, right? But when you are looking at a casual laborer and when you are looking at a self-employed person, they don't have any of this. That comes to a very important point, that the quality of jobs that are getting generated in the economy needs to be closely looked at. Right? Because if I don't have good quality jobs, well, then there is a problem, and that problem is basically what we call as very fragile jobs. Yeah. I would like to draw your attention to our two neighbors, Sri Lanka as well as Bangladesh. Yeah. Tremendous increase in terms of jobs in particular sectors, low value added work, right? And after a point leads to a lot of instabilities. Yeah. And we saw the results of that. Finally, there is a problem in terms of gender disparities in labor force participation. Right? There is no country in the world which has actually moved forward in terms of GDP per capita without women getting into the labor force. And India, we find that the difference between male and female labor force participation is one of the highest. Right? And just to put it in a perspective, so this is with one set of countries when I am comparing with Turkey, Mexico and things of that sort, Cambodia, Tanzania, and this is with Sri Lanka, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil and China. Right? We find that the gap, the gender gap in terms of percentage points is the highest as far as India is concerned. So this is the context in which we have to see this whole issue of demographic, whatever, transition and its dividend. What could be the forward-looking policies? And I'll stop here. So 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, please. Well, once I think we need to start looking towards the East, and it's very important, at least in this context, because East provides us very interesting kind of insights. Generally, we look at West and we think that, West is the model, but East has got very important lessons. Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, they have already shown how demographic dividend can be reached. Yeah, with an incredible kind of growth accelerating policies. And there are very important lessons for India. One, there is this window of opportunity, and India has already begun to get this dividend. If you want to continue to reap this dividend, we need to put in proactive policies. First, I have 6 or 7 points. I list out one by one. First, I think we need to spend more on children. What? A child in India consumes around 60% of the consumption of an adult. Right? Aged between 20 to 64. But a child in China consumes around 85%. So, it is time that we actually take care of our children more if we really want to reap demographic dividend. Second, same repeating, invest more in children. When we are looking at children, particularly in terms of nutrition and learning, I don't know if any one of you have seen the Economist magazine 2 issues back. There is a very, very disturbing kind of a lead article in that school achievements globally are not really going up, and school achievements in developing economies are actually falling. One of the points that we get in terms of extensive research on school performance and the other socio-economic variables is that if children have poor nutrition levels, their ability to comprehend would also come down. So we need to really spend a lot in terms of nutrition and learning in terms of early childhood, and that's why the first 1,000 days and all are very, very important. Okay. Third, health is very well known. Yeah, education and health. We don't need to underline it. And we spend very, very less in terms of GDP. Yeah. And it's important to have some policies where we increase this funding on health. And this is to be linked with nutrition as well as other kind of investments that we make on children. Now, this is something which I am repeating again in the middle because we're talking about forward looking. Why I say that this is very important because this is India, whereas our other Southeast Asian partners have almost crossed this opportunity, and we still have that opportunity. If we can get our policies right now, we can actually reap the dividend. We have not missed the bus yet. Okay. Fourth, very important, reproductive health care. Yeah. And accessible and rights-based reproductive health care is something which is very, very important. Now, whenever this National Family Health Survey comes, there will be always a debate. Government says that all this data is not very good. Other people say that no, this data shows this thing, that thing, and things of that sort. Last time it reached a flashpoint where the survey conducting agent's director had to step down. Right? So there is a problem when we talked about healthcare, especially in terms of reproductive health care. Fifth, gender equality as far as education is concerned. Yeah? That is, in India, still we find that boys are more likely to be enrolled in secondary and tertiary than girls. Secondary and tertiary education than girls. Yeah? And in Philippines, China and Thailand is very interesting. Yeah? We find that, girls have higher probability of getting enrolled in secondary and tertiary. We need to reverse this. Yeah? Japan, South Korea and Indonesia, we don't need to even think because the differential is actually very less. And sixth, the point that I already made, that is, we need to increase female workforce participation in the economy. Yeah? And here, very interesting case is South Korea. Yeah? Female participation rate is almost 50% in South Korea. And this is basically built on mandatory institutional requirements like gender budgeting, increase in childcare benefits, very important, tax incentives for part-time work. Yeah? So we need to think of how we can actually incentivize more women to enter into the labor market. Yeah? Seventh, there is vast diversity. We saw that in the beginning in terms of per capita, the map that put in per capita incomes across states. Yeah? Which means that we also need to think about, well, now this is of no big agenda. We are sure that we're going to miss that. Yeah. We thought that we could make some headway towards 2030 SDGs, but we will not be able to come anywhere near that. Yeah. But it is important that we understand this diversity and frame policies which are region specific, as was pointed out earlier. Finally, a lot of these things happen at the state level. There is very less that center can do. And it is again the point that was mentioned earlier, that it is the institutional and governance capacity of the states that actually need to be improved if India is to reap this dividend. I'll stop here and will be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh Babu. Now we invite Professor Magadikam